meaning is that when the capstone of the Great Pyramid is finally lifted into place, that's when America will truly become the nation that it is supposed to be.
The emblem of the pyramid is just the beginning of the case mounted by conspiracy theorists to see hidden Masonic codes and messages in the iconography of the dollar. It's claimed that the eye at the top of the pyramid is also a Masonic image, taken from Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Something the ancient Egyptians called the Wadjet eye. And the Wadjet eye, the eye of Horus, as it's known as well, seems to represent eternal life. It seems to represent life itself and resurrection.
And it's the all-seeing eye of their God that they believe will indeed bring us Ordo ab Chao. That is their slogan, order out of chaos.
When one considers the repeated use of the word destiny by Manly Hall, who wrote of the secret destiny of America, along with FDR, who had knowledge of Hall's library, and who said that Americans had a rendezvous with destiny. And then Henry Wallace, who referred to America itself as the land of destiny. It only makes sense that such men would have taken an interest in the stone of destiny. That Henry Wallace had an interest in seeking the Holy Grail is proven by the letters he wrote to Nicholas Roerich. As a Freemason, he would have seen an occult connection with America, since the stone of destiny is said to have come from heaven to earth, from the dog star Sirius. Known as the brightest star in the heavens, Sirius is an important key to understanding the stone and what the secret societies intend for the destiny of America.
Good morning! Morning, Truman! Morning, Spencer! Hey, Pluto. Oh, no. Get down. He won't hurt you.
When the United States was founded, the architecture of Washington, D.C. was designed in alignment with the rising of Sirius in the east. July 4th, Independence Day, is the day when the sun is in conjunction with this star, said to be 23 times more powerful than the sun itself. Also consider that Sirius is the blazing star or pentagram used in Masonic lodges. But as this mystical symbol relates to the dollar bill, we read that the famous emblem of the all-seeing eye, seen hovering above the unfinished pyramid, is a depiction of the Eye of Sirius and is a common motif found throughout Masonic lore. The importance of Sirius to the secret societies cannot be overstated. Some believe that the secrets of this star are a matter of life and death. In our last documentary, Riddles in Stone, Dr. Robert Hieronymus explained the importance of the dog star Sirius. This happened during a casual discussion, and some of what he said took us by surprise. Listen now to his uncut explanation to understand how critical the secrecy of this symbol is to Freemasonry and all the secret societies. And as you listen, remember, it is Sirius that rises in the east behind the sun, which stands as a picture of the twofold nature of every symbol in the occult.
Interesting thing about all of Freemasonry is that symbolism is ultimately very important. They don't put a lodge in the east because it's a nice place and it looks good. They put it in the east. The masters have put it in the east because
it's the rising sun.
It's the rising sun. You're catching the energies of the light,
right.
and to them, they didn't believe that the sun was God. All right, like we're told, the ancient Egyptians, we're told all the time that they thought the sun was God. Well, to simplify it, do I have time to tell them this part?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. As with all secret societies, you have levels, and if you're on the lower levels, you don't even know they're upper levels. They don't even tell you.
Right.
You bump into it by accident, or someone comes along. Now, in Scottish Rite, that's something different, because they know that there's a. But before then, and basically, secret societies such as, let's go to ancient Egypt. To the ancient Egyptians, the priest would tell the serfs, the guys that tilled the land, they would say, the sun is God. Okay? And so they accepted that very low-level interpretation, all physical. That's not what the priests believed. What the priests believed, there was a second level. The priests believed that, nope, the physical sun is not the supreme being. It's the spirit which flows through the physical sun that is the supreme deity. However, there was another level. And the priests didn't even know it. It's those that were involved and elevated to if I would have told you this 15 years ago, I might have gotten shot. But this is now, I'm so glad now that this is easy to talk about. The third level, which is a higher level of understanding, said, nope, it's not, that's not the sun. The sun is not the supreme deity. Nope, yes, spiritual energies come through the sun. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the star Sirius.
The dog star.
The dog star, because the dog star was everything to the ancient Egyptians, with the rising of the Nile and the feeding of the people, and so.
Augustine says that Washington D.C. was the dog star was important in the founding of Washington D.C.
Indeed, it was, yes, and that's a reflection on America. But the point I was just trying to make was that third level is never told. And with every group, every secret society I belong to, over but 15 or 16, I don't belong to any of them now. I can't.
15 to 16
different
secret societies?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, there were many different types.
Hey, is Zone here yet?
For the millionth time, no. I will budge you the second he gets here. Jeez, I've never seen you so excited. You're like a little girl the morning her brother gets out of jail for beating up a cop. Or Christmas morning.
Michael Faraday!
This is like stepping back in time.
The past is prologue, Michael. Men like us have to keep looking to the future.
I've been going over this Millennium Project proposal. There's some great stuff in here. I do think you should tone down the Armageddon end of days rhetoric.
No need to worry, Michael. I have some good news. I'm the Messiah.
That's a good joke. That's great. You start with that and you keep them light.
No, Michael. I'm serious. The chosen one. The King of Kings. The Alpha and the Omega. You're looking at him.
Look, Owen, if this is some kind of joke, let me just say, good one. I get it. That's hot.
I'm as shocked as you are, believe me. I'm as shocked as you are, believe me. This is a big responsibility. I mean, look at this.
Things to do. Banish Satan and the forces of evil. Build the New Jerusalem. Buy milk.
Milk. I keep forgetting to pick up milk.
Oh, and you can't be serious.
Oh, look, Michael, I know I'm supposed to be able to do this all by myself, being the Son of God and all. I know I'm supposed to be able to do this all by myself, being the Son of God and all, but I'm feeling a lot of pressure, so I was thinking, maybe you could help me.
Well, you want me to help you, banish Satan and establish God's kingdom on earth?
If you're not too busy.
So, I hear you've been out of the game for a while. Are you sure you're still as sharp as Mike says?
How long have you been dating your secretary?
About a week.
You like this, don't you? Yes, you do. Yeah. All right. That's about all, kiddo. There you go. There you are. You just stay right there, Rags, all right?
Poor Rags. Good dog.
He's alive. It's a miracle.
I'm the Messiah. I'm serious. The chosen one. The King of Kings. The Alpha and the Omega. You're looking at him.
While Dr. Hieronymus's claims of belonging to more than a dozen secret societies might sound incredible, it is important to remember that he is the most highly recognized authority on the history of the Great Seal.
Eye in a triangle in the pyramid.
And he is closely associated with the leading Masonic apologist in America, Dr. S. Brent Morris.
Now, you know, Bob Hieronymus, Dr. Bob, is the expert on the Great Seal.
Because of this, we believe the insights of Dr. Hieronymus not only into the Great Seal, but also on the importance of the dog star Sirius to secret societies becomes that much more significant. Listen again to what he says about Sirius when we make mention of the book on the secret design of Washington, D.C. by Masonic author David Oveson.
And so
Oveson says that Washington, D.C. was the dog star was important in the founding of Washington, D.C.
Indeed, it was, yes, and that's a reflection on America. That's a reflection on America.
How is Sirius a reflection on America, according to the secret societies? And is it just a coincidence that the Stone of Destiny, awaited by an American vice president and supposedly in the possession of his guru, is said to have come from this blazing star? In the occult, the stone is not only a type of the Holy Grail, but seems to be a symbol for the secrets of Masonry, as understood by Henry Wallace. In his book, The Occult Conspiracy, Michael Howard says of Wallace that the Secretary of Agriculture was well versed in occult knowledge. In a letter to his Russian guru, he stated, The search, whether it be for the lost word of masonry, or the holy chalice, or the potentialities of the age to come, is the one supremely worthwhile objective. So may we strive for the chalice and the flame above it. Howard says the chalice he refers to is the Holy Grail, regarded by the Rosicrucians as a feminine symbol for perfection, and the age to come is the dawning of the Aquarian Age. The concept of the flaming chalice is another repeated theme in the paintings of Nicholas Roerich.
And you can see this entity holding the chalice, and there's a flame coming up from the middle of the cup part of the chalice. This is a painting of Prophet Muhammad. And interestingly, he's viewing a specter of a person of some sort or other who's bearing in the heart area the chalice that's burning the flame. That's consistent with Zoroastrian motifs as well as Agni Yoga. But when I was in Isfahan, for example, and in Tehran, I visited the Zoroastrian temples, and those chalices that bear the flames are as big as I am. And I'm sure that Nicholas Roerich had the occasion to see those chalices in the Zoroastrian temples.
The Zoroastrians must perform special customs to enter the fire temple. As well as personal cleanliness, they have to remove their shoes, men have to wear white caps, and women white scarves and light-colored cloths. The person who is responsible for keeping the fire burning is called Hirbut. In the center of the room, the sacred flame is burning above a flower-shaped table full of ash. It's a place of worship for the Zoroastrians. They believe fire is an element of purity in life.
In his journeys through the East and the Near East. But this is definitely Muhammad. He's named it Muhammad the Prophet. But for some interesting reason, Muhammad is viewing some kind of spiritual entity with that fire-bearing chalice in the heart zone.
While Roerich's paintings are today kept in a modest museum in Manhattan, they were once kept in a towering building on the Upper West Side. In the 1920s, Roerich was supported by a wealthy benefactor and Freemason named Louis Horch. Like Wallace, Horch considered Roerich to be his guru and financed the construction of a massive building to honor him. It was called the Master Building. During this era, Roerich designed what he called a peace banner that went along with the Roerich Peace Pact that had been signed by Henry Wallace. The symbol was simply 3 circles in a triangle formation. This symbol can be seen even today, engraved on the black cornerstone of the Master Building. Buff Perry and others believe that certain arcane contents, including the Stone of Destiny, were placed inside this cornerstone when it was laid.
This is the seal over the cornerstone of the Master Building that is at the corner of 103rd and Riverside Drive. And here you see 1929 and the 3 circles with an M and then an R beneath it. And I believe that means Master Roerich, meaning Master Building in effect. He was like an edifice to people at that time.
So the idea of the master building was the idea that Roerich himself was the master. Is that
Absolutely, absolutely. The whole building was built for him, for his use, in his honor, and in his name. And it was to be used as a place where there would be art galleries, art studios. Great writers of the past lived there.
Joseph Campbell was there?
Joseph Campbell lived there for a period of time.
Joseph Campbell was a highly regarded esoteric who wrote about the power of myth. His works are still celebrated by the Theosophical Society to this day. Another 20th century luminary who frequented the Master Building was Manly P. Hall. Hall was clearly interested in Roerich, and in his books wrote about the symbolism of the stone that is called the Grail.
And we don't know where that stone is today. I think that Buff Perry knows a little more about where it might be now, but some believe it's in the foundation stone of the Roerich Building, the Roerich Museum there in New York. Mr. Hall used to go to the Roerich Museum in his early days, just after he had written the big book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages, because there in the penthouse of the Roerich Building met the very elite, the esoteric elite, you might say, who were really into not only the mysteries of the great world religions, but also the mysteries that many people don't know that was part of the motivation in the founding of our own country.
While the Master Building today is used mainly for apartment living, the penthouse located in the upper levels is still there. Is it possible that Henry Wallace could have been one of those esoteric elite who met there with men like Manly Hall? There is at least one record of his meeting with Nicholas Roerich at the Master Building. American Heritage reports that Wallace visited the museum and was thrilled beyond measure to receive a brief audience with Roerich. He found the artist's appearance, demeanor, and plans to promote culture and peace extremely impressive. He admired Roerich's paintings because he said they gave him a smooth feeling inside. The article goes on to say that Wallace avidly read the painter's writings and frequently communicated with the officials of the Roerich Museum. Whether FDR himself ever attended the penthouse meetings is unknown, but it is reported that the president's mother was an admirer of Roerich, and Roosevelt himself had once met and been favorably impressed by the artist. It is also worth noting that in 1932, First Lady-elect Eleanor Roosevelt gave a lecture at the Roerich Museum Lecture Hall. American Heritage writes, the State Department grew very nervous about Roerich, but he had influence in the Oval Office. With such connections, is it possible that inside the mysterious penthouse at the upper level of the Master Building, the so-called esoteric elite decided on the design for America's dollar bill? Remember that the Master Building was finished in 1929. The Great Seal was not placed on America's currency until 6 years later in 1935. All of the players in this drama were involved in Masonry, including the Secretary of Treasury, Henry Morgenthau.
When Morgenthau, the Secretary of the Treasury, regretted having placed the all-seeing eye on the verso of the American dollar bill, he made reference to a small Kabbalistic group that used that symbol in their ceremonies, and because of that regretted that that symbol ever would have made it onto the dollar bill, which to me is rather peculiar because Masons for centuries had already used that all-seeing eye in their lodges, in their literature, and in all means and manner of expression.
Perry's suggestion is that while Morgenthau, as a Mason, might not object to a Masonic symbol, he was concerned about the influence of what appeared to be a personality cult surrounding Nicholas Roerich.
He was a little embarrassed that perhaps all of the information got out that Nicholas Roerich, the guru, would have been instrumental in seeing to it that that symbol ended up on the dollar bill.
We took a trip to the Master Building and met with the building's historiographer, Mildred Spicer. She lives inside one of the apartments with a view through the right-angled windows that are famous for being the first of their kind. Whether or not they were intended to represent the Pythagorean right triangle, a favorite symbol among Masons, is for the viewer to decide.
Roerich's idea was to have that Mason symbol put on the dollar bill, so every resident in the U.S. is connected to Roerich through the dollar bill.
While we were there, Mildred confirmed that Roerich's chief financial supporter, Louis Horch, was in fact a 33rd degree Freemason.
And that was given, sent to me by Oriole. Her father was Louis Horch, and she and her mother, Nettie Horch, were very involved with the museum. And during this time, they were caught up in the mysticism of Roerich.
And those who were part of Roerich's inner circle were invited to the highest level. With Mildred's help, we were able to make our way up the elevators and then the many stairs to the much talked about penthouse, which some have called a kind of temple or meditation room.
There, is that where they had their meditation?
No, meditation was right in back of you. We were that apartment, and it was...
Behind this green door may well have been the place where Nicholas Roerich met with men like Manly Hall, Henry Wallace, and countless others to discuss America's secret destiny and quite probably the occult design of the Great Seal. The penthouse is currently used as an apartment, and we were unable to see inside of it. But we followed Buff Perry onto the roof to get a look at the architecture from the exterior.
We're at the very top of the Master Building, and behind you is the river, and in front of you is the outside walling of the meditation room or temple or whatever one wants to call it, the chapel that Roerich had constructed for his private spiritual purposes.
So it's right on the other side of this wall.
Yeah, it's this, all this in here. And that's the very top.
The staggered layers at the top of the penthouse seem to bear some resemblance to one of Roerich's paintings titled Arhat. In Buddhism, Arhat is the highest level of enlightenment, said to be the ultimate goal of nirvana. In Roerich's painting, notice the image of the Buddhist figure sitting inside the staggered stones, perhaps a symbol for the enlightened esoteric elite in the meditation room. The Master Building rooftop is undoubtedly interesting, especially since it overlooks the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine, the largest cathedral in the world, where many of the occult concepts of America all seem to come together. What's interesting is that much of the cathedral was being built during FDR's administration. On the outside, there is a cross before what is called the Rose Window, an obvious symbol of Rosicrucianism. Inside the cathedral, we find praying saints, alongside lurking demons. An image of what looks like a Zoroastrian Maitreya hangs upon a cross at the altar. Meanwhile, an upside-down cross is seen in one of the alcoves, serving as a monument to September 11th.
Coming to you from a very disclosed location, St. John's Cathedral in New York City. We're sort of an occult bent here. This cathedral is one of the largest in the world, built in 1925. I believe it's got Masonic underpinnings to it. And as we zoom in here, we're going to show you what's underneath some of these very large figurines. Again, the iconography is incredibly disturbing. It's scenes from the apocalypse. It actually shows the two towers, the twin towers coming down. These were added around in 1980s, 1990, well before the events of 9/11. So it clearly shows the destruction of the twin towers collapsing. It also shows New York City. It appears to be engulfed by a flood. Why would this be here? Why do this? The interior is incredibly ornate, elaborate, the stonework. The huge cathedral ceiling is absolutely incredible. But again, when you walk into this place, those who have eyes to see what is underneath the statues. And in my opinion, it's extremely troubling. Look at the four horsemen of the apocalypse which are there. Look at the skeletons and death. Look at Kabbalistic sign. Why is that there? Why do we have the Kabbalah represented here? So whoever did this did it with great deliberation. And once again, here it is hiding in plain sight. And we have a prophecy from the dark side of what will happen here in this city. Starting with the Twin Towers, later on New York being engulfed by a flood. So it's very interesting.
We're here this evening at the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine in New York City for the annual Halloween extravaganza. Around 3,000 people at each of two showings gather in this massive space for the event. Being the largest Gothic cathedral in the world, this is a great space for this show. Here's some pre-show entertainment. Then there's an old silent movie shown. Tonight is a 1922 classic, Nosferatu. It's accompanied by the great organ. Then the highlight of the evening, the March of the Ghouls. These are really great costumes and wonderful acting. It's accompanied by Tim Blumfield playing the great Aeolian Skinner organ.
Elsewhere, a phoenix bird is carved beneath the pulpit. A carving of George Washington is found next to that of William Shakespeare. And on the floor is the seal of St. Albans. St. Albans was one of the names given to Sir Francis Bacon. And in the midst of it, we find obvious imagery pertaining to the Holy Grail. Some more obvious than others, like this seal on the floor of the cathedral. But notice that there are two cups beneath the cross. Could this be suggestive of the two grail concept put forth by Wolfram von Eschenbach and others, who believe that the grail is both the cup of Christ and the stone of destiny? It is worth noting that Grail legends were of great importance during the time of FDR and the whole World War II generation. Not only in America, but in Europe, Richard Wagner based his famous opera, Parsifal, on the writings of Wolfram von Eschenbach. This opera would become a central focus for Adolf Hitler, and as a result, there are some who have argued that Hitler's whole life was dedicated to the Holy Grail. Occult historian Tracy Twyman writes of what Hitler and other occultists believed about the Grail, that it dates long before the time of Christ, all the way back to ancient Atlantis. She writes that just as Hermes possessed a magic stone, which has been associated with the Holy Grail, Hercules also possessed a heavenly stone and a special cup that he carried it in. According to Plato's dialogue, the Pillars of Hercules were the gateway to Atlantis. This may be why Sir Francis Bacon used these same pillars as a symbol for achieving greater knowledge. Oddly enough, about the same time the Masons were finishing the work on the master building, Nicholas Roerich finished this painting titled The Last of Atlantis. Which brings us back to the greater mystery of the Roerich building and what may be the secret key to understanding the dollar bill. But first, how did the Stone of Destiny come into the possession of Nicholas Roerich?
The receiving of this stone in the Rothenburg casket was very mysterious. Nobody's completely certain who sent it to him, but he and his wife Helena were in Paris in 1923 in an exquisite suite when all of a sudden this was delivered. And it was delivered in this box, and the box says 5 Place Vendôme, and that's 5 Vendôme Place, which was where they were staying, and it was sent from Bankers Trust, from MM, and it's addressed to Madame and Monsieur N. Roerich. And after many years, this is what has come of the Rothenburg casket that was in this pine wood box.
But why would this artifact have been delivered to Nicholas Roerich? And could it have really ended up inside the cornerstone of the master building, as Buff Perry and others believe?
When it was mysteriously delivered to Nicholas Roerich in 1923, he carries it around. He ends up going to India with it. By 1929, he's had this huge building, a 29-story Art Deco building built for him in New York City by Louis Horch, an investment banker, with a cornerstone prepared to have this sacred casket bearing the stone and other artifacts sent from India, because he's now taking it in 1923 from Paris to India, and placed in the cornerstone for posterity.
All of this might seem a bit too incredible, except for the fact that the laying of the cornerstone for the master building was a major event in 1929, attended by foreign dignitaries from around the world. From Spain, France, Poland, Australia, Romania, and a host of other countries. Why would they all turn out for this event?
This 1929 event is very important. Albert Einstein sent a tribute, which I have a copy of, to the construction of the building, to the meaning of Nicholas Roerich, who he was, what he was doing for humanity, and why the laying of this cornerstone was so important.
Rabindranath Tagore, many luminaries and notables, government officials and the like, including Henry Wallace, who became FDR's vice president, first Secretary of Agriculture and then vice president in the next decade. And that becomes very intriguing, what all the connectedness is in terms of FDR, Freemasonry, and the stone.
Just as Freemasons were involved with the designing of the dollar bill, they were also involved in the construction of the Master Building. As noted earlier, the Master Building was financed by Louis Horch, who was appointed to a number of government offices during FDR's administration. In fact, he was placed in charge of the Department of Commerce by his fellow Freemason and Roerich disciple, Henry Wallace. As we have seen, Wallace, in his letters, shared a fascination with the Stone of Destiny.
And so the stone today is in this building? The stone is in this casket, said to be in this casket. The reports I have received from the Roerich Museum would have that stone in this Rajput casket in the cornerstone of the Master Building.
The interest of men like Albert Einstein, Henry Wallace, and not to mention all the foreign dignitaries becomes quite intriguing when one considers the full contents of the casket that was said to be placed inside the cornerstone.
I'm familiar with the ingredients of the Rajput casket by having read letters from Zina Fosdick and her own notebook entries, and also because Aida Tolskaya herself, one of the co-curators of the Roerich Museum, wrote out what Zina Fosdick had stated they had placed in the Rajput casket in Darjeeling before it was delivered to the city of New York to be placed in the cornerstone.
As Buff Perry explained, the letter that describes the contents of the casket comes from Zina Fosdick, a longtime devoted disciple of Nicholas Roerich, who would later become the director of the Roerich Museum. The museum photo collection is filled with images of Fosdick alongside Roerich while they were in Darjeeling, India, where the casket was prepared. As such, it stands to reason that she would have known the details of what they put inside.
The letter's written by Zina Fosdick, and it was actually an entry in her diary. And what's written here is an accounting of all of the ingredients that are in the Rajput casket that was prepared in Darjeeling, India, in 1928 to be delivered to New York, to Manhattan, and to be placed in the cornerstone of the Master Building. There are a lot of interesting things that were placed in the Rajput casket. For example, an image of Maitreya printed on Tibetan paper.
As we showed earlier, in the occult belief, the Maitreya is said to be the last Messiah that will come.
The Maitreya is seen as the final deliverer and incarnation in the Buddhist tradition. Again, he's also Kalki in the Hindu tradition, the 10th incarnation of Vishnu. Vishnu is the great god of Hinduism. So they're not mixing up Jesus with Maitreya, but they are seeing Maitreya as a messianic figure, a world Messiah, who would answer all of the expectations of all the world religions at one time.
The reason Roerich would not mix up Jesus with Maitreya is because of the New Age belief that Maitreya is the true Christ, while Jesus was only his disciple. This is also the teaching of Scottish mystic Benjamin Creme.
Maitreya embodies what we call the Christ principle, the Christ consciousness. And 2,000 years ago, he overshadowed his disciple, Jesus. Jesus was not the Christ, except for 3 years. Over these 3 years, from the baptism to the crucifixion, Jesus was overshadowed by Maitreya. And when he spoke, sometimes it was Maitreya speaking, sometimes it was Jesus.
We featured Creme in our last documentary, Riddles in Stone. He is the founder of Share International and has been declaring for more than 30 years that Maitreya would be arriving soon.
Maitreya is standing by, ready to come into the world at any moment.
When we spoke with Creme in 2006, he had just come from speaking to the United Nations.
While I was in New York, I gave a talk at the United Nations, and there was a large group of New York theosophists. A certain number from outside the United Nations were allowed to come to the talk, and they were very responsive, very responsive.
These theosophists are modern members of the Theosophical Society, of which both Nicholas Roerich and Henry Wallace were members. Other famous members included Thomas Edison and Mahatma Gandhi, as well as Gandhi's close friend Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. Also pictured here, beside Nicholas Roerich. But in addition to the image of Maitreya, what were the rest of the contents buried inside the cornerstone of the master building?
A portrait of M.M. This, I believe, is Master Morya.
Master Morya was one of the names given to a spirit that is said to have inspired Madame H.P. Blavatsky. Roerich's wife, Helena, claimed that the same spirit was in contact with her and inspired her writings.
It's Master Morya, who is actually Helena Roerich, channeling this entity, if I can put it that way.
One of her books was titled On Eastern Crossroads, in which she wrote extensively about the stone in her husband's possession, calling it the Serpent Stone, and saying, "The stone cometh," and "It is a most grievous error to deny the stone." In fact, the quote from one of Henry Wallace's Guru letters about the new country that goes forth and the admonition to await the stone comes directly from this book.
Nicholas Roerich tended more to write about, sort of physical reality and the adventures in the Himalayan mountains in the Altai region toward the Himalayan mountains, where his wife, Helena, wrote about the channeling and the esoterica, the theosophical kind of side of things.
While Roerich's writings may have dealt with reality, his paintings were anything but, dedicated to universal archetypes, and with them, the promise of a sacred treasure. That brings us to the third, and perhaps most important item, placed inside the cornerstone of the master building.
They're all people who had varying kinds of relations with Nicholas Roerich. They were channelers, they were followers. But to me, personally, greatest interest is this side statement that Aida Tolskaya, who is also one of the curators of the Roerich Museum, wrote. Sina omits a piece of the stone that was placed in the casket. This goes back to that famous stone that the Roerichs became a cause célèbre because of, and many other people wrote about later. Everything changed once they received this. The 1924 marked a whole new direction for them all, and this came about. I think this is 1924. You'll see the casket here is the same casket there.
And this is a burning casket of some kind.
Yeah, Chintamani. Chintamani is a Sanskrit term that means a stone of wisdom, that he calls the treasure of the world. And that's how he depicted the treasure of the world, the ultimate treasure of the world.
It seems only appropriate that this treasure hunt would take us back to Manly Hall's society in Los Angeles, and in particular to one of the graduates there from the University of Philosophical Research, a Freemason named Gavin Wentz. On his website, he quotes a curious passage from Eschenbach's Grail legend with a clear reference to the Knights Templar. The passage reads, "Wherever these Templars receive victory or defeat, I will tell you by what they live. They live with a stone. If you do not know it by name, I will name it for you."
The government of the Order of the Temple of Solomon. I mean, not only are we in the time where everyone's saying, is there going to be a third temple? And then in 2013, it comes to light here that the Knights Templar are back, not that they ever went away, but they've come back into the public light. The Sovereign Magistral Order of the Temple of Solomon. 2013 AD. It's fully restored as an independent sovereign subject of international law in 2013, embodying the authentic Templar heritage. And we literally have a whole website here which is dedicated to all of these official documents, legal documents, mind you, and the missions. This is what I want to show you, this Templar spirituality. And this is how this links with this deception that we're seeing, the worship of the goddess, the reverence of the divine feminine, Gaia. The temple rule proves that the Knights Templar were always dedicated to honouring the divine feminine principle as the spiritual feminine aspect of God. So you can see how this ties to the Roman Catholic Church, to the Jesuits, to Allah, the moon goddess, and to all of these false religions, but also this pagan New Age, which is actually the Old Age Babylon agenda, and the throwing out of this masculine. We see all these attacks on God and the Old Testament and the truth of God, and turning into this airy-fairy, emotional, experiential deal without boundaries, without restrictions, without commands. And all of this stuff is tying into, when you come to its very core, the conspiracy at its very heart of the New World Order, the Antichrist, the paganism, the Babylon agenda, New World Order, is actually rooted in the Knights Templar, who never went away, but now in 2013 have officially come out into the public and declared themselves sovereign, a sovereign entity without territory, but sovereign nonetheless. So it's all about Gnosticism and Christian mysticism, the divine feminine. The uniquely ancient and diverse heritage of Templar spirituality was fully disclosed to the Vatican and officially endorsed by the Roman Catholic Church. Authentic Templar spirituality is a form of esoteric Gnosticism which is wholly compatible with the canonical Christian mysticism of classical Catholicism. Gnostic spirituality primarily concentrates on personal divine communion through the Holy Spirit. Here we go, look, Templar chivalry, look at this. This is the picture of the Pope with all the world leaders of religions, of false religions. Hinduism, Islam, Baha'i. And this is what they are showing. And at the bottom of the page we can see all of these emblems which say a lot. Pontifical protection, recognised by 5 Vatican papal bulls as Templar guardians of the Church. Cooperation with Islam. Look at that, cooperation with Islam as a tool of the Jesuit Knights Templar. Look at this. The Knights of Saladin under Templar sovereign patronage. Diplomatic relations with the United Nations with the crest of Rome. Oh my goodness me. Look at this, United Nations. This is where all of these agendas are coming to. So, and remember with the United Nations that they have those books on New Age spirituality, Alice Bailey and all of these people who were involved in this Gnostic counterfeit spirituality of the Antichrist. And this is very similar. This logo is very similar to what we see on some of the big Christian, so-called Christian broadcasting networks at the very top. But with this fire and water. So we see on a lot of these big organizational level, a lot of Illuminati symbolism. And what it is essentially, remember with the Knights Templar, this is dominionism. This is dominion theology about taking over the world. So this explains the influx of false doctrine of Jesuit infiltrators into churches, into the mainstream Christian media, and all with this core belief of the Holy Grail, the divine feminine Gnosticism that they are really pushing onto churches and losing those boundaries. They're advertising it as something like in Hollywood, you know, we need to get out of this box and we need to, you know, forget all the old stuff. We need to free ourselves, liberate ourselves, liberation from the old into this new spirituality, which is a lot more humanistic and it's a lot more divine, and you feel more, you experience more, and that's the cheese on the trap that they're trying to pull people in. I mean, yes, there are certain good things to Reformation, but they are staging a counterfeit Reformation, which is a Knights Templar Gnostic Reformation, and they're pulling people into these horrific scenes which I showed at the beginning of this with Bethel Music and all of these people that have counterfeit revivals, counterfeit prophecies, counterfeit signs and wonders. These groups that are actually pushing a Kundalini spirit. These you know, these counterfeit crusades that they hold at the, you know, these top levels, which are coaxing and coercing people into a counterfeit spirit.
It is called Lapsite Exilis. The stone is also called the Grail. Eschenbach's reference to the Knights Templar is curious. During the same period that he wrote his Grail legend, the Templar Church of Garway, England was built. Inside we find mysterious symbols carved above what appears to be the outline of a man. These carvings are said to be a depiction of the Holy Grail, the chalice shown here. In the midst of it is a traditional Catholic host with a cross in the center. But inside the chalice, just beneath the host, is what appears to be a truncated pyramid. Which brings us back to Gavin Wince, who produced an award-winning documentary which he titled Lapis Exilis, based on a variant spelling of the Grail name given by von Eschenbach. This slight alteration to the original name had been recorded in the diary of Nicholas Roerich.
And it seems to be a contraction of several words in the Eschenbach example, but clearly in Roerich's example, Lapis Exilis means the the exiled stone or the wandering stone or the stone that comes in from somewhere else.
The word lapis is simply Latin for the stone. But how was this stone envisioned by Roerich and his disciple Henry Wallace? Roerich described the stone as a type of moldavite, the meteoric stone of green or emerald color. This would seem to fit with the description given by von Eschenbach in the 12th century. On his website, dedicated to the stone's history, Freemason Gavin Wince came to this conclusion about just what Nicholas Roerich envisioned as lapis exilis, the stone they call the Grail.
Today in Vatican City, they're holding a celebration of the birth of the Roman Catholic Sun-Child. The first thing I find interesting is that they've actually placed the depiction directly underneath the Star of Ishtar, the Eastern Star of the mystery religions. If that isn't blatant enough, you can see that the star is being propped up by an Egyptian obelisk. So straight off you can see that this is a counterfeit copy, a mirror of the real thing. Then of course you've got this giant Kabbalistic tree, and also accompanied by other ancient symbology that should make it absolutely clear that this represents the birth of the sun god of the Babylonian mystery schools. The feast of the Immaculate Conception that took place just a day before this festival is simply a code for the birth of the Antichrist, or the ripping of the dimensional veil.
And I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace.
Many people believe the Vatican to be evil and in the hands of the devil himself, the serpent who deceived Eve and Adam and who even now deceives the world. The Vatican knows all about Satan, of course, and the serpent in the garden deceiving. So why would they build the Pope Paul VI audience hall at the Vatican with a design that, when looked at from the rear of the hall, is in the shape of a serpent's head, complete with scaly-type skin and a mouth with 2 fangs? Interestingly, the building, built in the mid-1970s, is made of reinforced concrete and is very much like a nuclear shelter. In fact, the statue on the stage of the hall shows Christ resurrecting from a nuclear holocaust. Friends, why in the world would a religious institution do something like that? Why build a building that is so much like a nuclear shelter with a statue of Christ inside ascending from a nuclear holocaust? Why build a building that looks like a serpent when you look at it? And from the outside of the building, it looks again like the serpent's head, facing to the right of the screen here, with just the right eye visible. Now, why do all of this unless someone, some group, is secretly honouring the serpent himself and perhaps expecting some kind of nuclear war even? You know, we have to remember, as I've said earlier, these groups, these satanically inspired organisations, call them the Illuminati, the Freemasons, the New World Order, or whatever, they like to communicate through symbolism. And here we see the symbolism of Satan himself, the old serpent, the deceiver, at home in the Vatican, a supposed Christian body. But in reality, folks, it's anything but. Why build the Parliament building itself to represent the broken down Tower of Babel that is depicted in a painting by Peter Bruegel? The architects actually built the Parliament building to look like the painting by Peter Bruegel of the broken down Tower of Babel. That's incredible. See, the answer is simple. The politicians tell us that in bringing the nations together, they are reversing what they call the Babel effect. Now, that's what they say. They say we are reversing the Babel effect. The EU even issued a poster showing the Tower of Babel being rebuilt. Now, the 12 stars that surround the tower, notice this, they are inverted to form the head of the occult satanic goat named Baphomet, whom occultists worship. That is on the EU poster that says they are many tongues, but all speak with one voice, reversing the Babel effect brought about by the judgment of God. Now, that is a blasphemy.
So much confusion surrounds the legend of the Knights Templar. As with everything, there is an official story, there's a true story, and there's an untold story. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, presumably with the full sanction and agreement of the original Templar Knights, had dedicated the knightly order unequivocally to the Virgin Mary. All its endeavors were undertaken in her name, and it was this name that they cried as they went into battle. The Templars were, from the beginning to end, a Marianist brotherhood. Bearing in mind St. Bernard's own reverence for Mary, or whatever she actually represented in his mind and heart, it is likely that the original Templars, and perhaps the whole order for 200 years, maintained a common belief with Bernard. Source, America, Nation of the Goddess, The Venus Families and the Founding of the United States by Alan Butler and Janet Walter, page 96. Bernard's adoration of the Virgin Mary knew no bounds, and it all started with a most unusual encounter when he was a young priest. According to his own words, Bernard had been praying before a statue of the Virgin when she lifted her hand to her breast. Drops of milk then fell from her breast into Bernard's open mouth. And there are images of this event that you can find if you search for Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. If you search for his name, they will pop up. You don't have to search milk squirting or anything. From that moment on, he committed himself exclusively to the Virgin Mary, and it was something he passed on. Although historians often point to the veneration the Knights Templar had for John the Baptist, in reality, their patron was always the Virgin Mary. Almost all Cistercian abbeys were named for her, as were many, if not most, Templar churches. Back to the goddess, the Grail, and the Lodge again. The bearded head mentioned in the original charges is interesting, and it may represent the vestiges of a much earlier and essentially pagan belief. The Celts, in particular, had a cult of the severed head. Examples of sculpted stones can be found all over the Celtic world. This head may also have related John the Baptist, for whom the Templars had a special reverence. But of course, that's the official story. Even more likely is the suggestion that the bearded head could have represented the Green Man. Effigies of the Green Man are to be seen in many Gothic churches and cathedrals. Generally speaking, the Green Man is simply a face. He is usually depicted as being composed of branches and leaves, and quite often has tendrils of plants emanating from his mouth and nostrils. Few historians now doubt that the Green Man is a hangover from the days of nature worship, and in particular, worship of the goddess. Here's a note from me. The Green Man is also named Cernunnos. This is Apollyon in your Bible. Of special interest is the name that Philip's representative said the Templars attributed to this head, namely Baphomet. The word Baphomet has a very special meaning. As early as 500 BC, Hebrew writers and scholars have begun to use a code which has come to be known as the Atbash cipher. A full realization of the importance of the Atbash cipher only came to light with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Essene in particular used this method of hiding specific truths. The Atbash cipher is a fairly simple substitution cipher. It was the highly respected New Testament scholar Dr. Hugh Schonfield who realized exactly what Baphomet meant when the Atbash cipher was applied to it. In all probability, the name Baphomet had nothing to do with the mysterious bearded head of the Templars, and the confusion may have been due to the ineptitude on the part of Philip IV's interrogators. A reminder, the Templars were accused of idolatry, and King Philip IV had interrogators to get them to confess of their crimes, their alleged crimes. However, the word was still of tremendous importance to the Templars because once it has gone through the mill of the Atbash cipher, Baphomet comes out as Sophia. The Templars were dedicated to the Virgin Mary, for whom they showed what amounted to an obsession. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux had deliberately manipulated the Catholic Church of his day to virtually deify Mary. The Templar order was accused of worshipping Baphomet, which we know is a code word and which really means Sophia. Sophia in turn is often represented as a dove. The dove has represented the goddess for thousands of years. It seems more and more likely that the true religious imperatives of the Templars meant that, in 14th century Christian terms, they were guilty as charged. That is all I have. Thank you for watching. Just so that there is absolutely no confusion, I will reiterate one more time that the Baphomet name has nothing to do with the goat-headed image that Eliphaz Levi created, and it has nothing to do with the head of the John the Baptist that, according to the official story, is John the Baptist, but we know the truth behind that is that it is the Green Man, Apollyon. So the Baphomet has nothing to do with those two things at all. The Baphomet is a word, a code word for Sophia, or wisdom, which points us to the Virgin Mary, or the Catholic Virgin Mary, the woman that they claim is the Virgin Mary. But now we know that that is not the truth. We know who she really is. This woman is Satan. She is the adversary. And so now that you know, you can hopefully fight the lies and deceptions with the truth. So thank you for watching. I hope you're all edified. Jesus bless you.
What are you doing with the rest of your life?
Catching up on some me time, find God.
My soul loves Jesus. My soul loves Jesus. My soul loves Jesus. Bless his name. My soul, it loves Jesus. Oh, yes it does. Oh, yes it does. Oh, yeah, my soul. My soul. Over in the midnight hour, my soul. He speaks to my soul. Tells me everything is gonna be alright. Jesus set me free. I hope he set you free. Like he did